the angels, and a word that will come out of his mouth will cause the entire army of the enemies to be destroyed. Okay? So we're talking about huge carnage. Just try to imagine all these enemies. I can even imagine that in my mind. Logistical centers, headquarters, command posts, etc. of all the nations of the world, and the whole valley, it says, will be filled with blood and with the corpses of these enemies. This is how Jesus is coming back. You know, a lot of times when we think about Jesus, we think about his initial humble entry to the world as the Lamb of the Passover, but you better believe it, the next time he's coming as the roaring lion of Judah, okay, bringing wrath and judgment with him. Obviously, we have a lot to look forward to. Just looking at these traces of worship of the devil is a reminder as to the domain that the devil has still in this world. I mean, we live in a fallen world. A lot of things which we take for granted, this twisted reality, is because of sin, because of the domain of the devil. But it's also worth remembering that there's a set date that only God knows, God the Father, where enough is enough, and when he will send his Son again to the world, this time to put an end to wickedness. So for us as Christians, as believers, I think we should really look forward to Armageddon. I know that the depiction in movies and literature of Armageddon in the world is something horrible and terrifying. It's definitely terrifying if you're on the wrong side, but for us, this is a great encouragement and a great reminder as to the fact that we know how the story ends. And the story ends with an utter and complete victory for the part of God. So this is just a little something that I wanted to share with you without going too much into eschatology and pre-rap and post-rap and all that. People have different views and opinions about that, but I'm sure that we can all agree that this will be the end of an era and the beginning of a new era, the best era that this world has ever known, when Jesus will reign as king. Can you imagine? The ruler of this world is Jesus, right? Yes.
Where's Jerusalem from here?
Well, Jerusalem is only about 65 miles that way.
Oh, okay.
And so you see the junction down there. This is the Megiddo Junction, and you see the road, the highway going all the way across the valley. This is where the Via Maris was at. Okay, and so just to point out a number of things, in terms of orientation, this is west. You see the clouds are coming from the Mediterranean Sea, and over the ridge here, Mount Carmel. East is this way, okay, north that way. You see Galilee over here, and the next ridge over, above the valley on this side, is the Nazareth Ridge. You can actually see the modern day city of Nazareth on top of those hills over there, okay. The Sea of Galilee would be beyond that, okay, so Galilee over there. Then, over further to the east, okay, to the right, is one round hill, okay, by itself, which is called Mount Tabor. Mount Tabor. Do you see a building on top there? Okay, the Catholics believe that Jesus' transfiguration took place on top of that mountain. So they built a church there, the Church of Transfiguration. But as I explained yesterday, many others believe that it was further north, in the vicinity of Caesarea Philippi, but because it's actually connected to the journey of Jesus in the district of Caesarea Philippi. Now, moving again clockwise, further to the right, you see another hill. There's a big town at the base of that hill. This is a modern-day Jewish town by the name of Afula. And the hill that you see over there is mentioned in the book of Judges, chapters 6 and 7. And that's, of course, the famous story about Gideon and the 300 men. It says that the camp of the Midianites was right by the hill of Moreh. This is the hill of Moreh over there. So if this is where the Midianites camped, where was Gideon and the 300 men? You remember that they selected the men who would go with Gideon. Okay, the next mountain over to the right, this is Mount Gilboa. And at the base of that mountain is a place called Gideon Spring. You see that the two mountains are only a few miles apart, okay? And so having selected the 300 men that would go with Gideon, Gideon then marched all night across that valley, and then eventually, in the middle of the night, you remember, he surprised the enemies. They blew the trumpets, they smashed the pitchers in the ground, they unveiled the torches, And what followed was basically friendly fire, right? As they were killing each other and started fleeing the area. And so that's Mount Gilboa over there. And then from Mount Gilboa, further to the right, is a region called Samaria. Okay, the land of Samaria would be over there. And then beyond Samaria, further to the south, about 65 miles that way, is Judea and Jerusalem. Okay, so Galilee to the north, the Jezreel Valley here, Samaria and Judea. Okay, north to south. Now, before we move on, since we're already here, okay, take a look at this forest. Okay, beyond the junction, the next hill over, okay, there's a forested area. Beyond that, not far from there, just a few miles beyond that, is a small valley called Dothan, or Dothan in English. Does this ring a bell? The Valley of Dothan? What happened there?
I can't remember.
Now, David, Joseph. Remember the story? Okay, so Jacob, right, sends Joseph to his older brothers, and he tells them to hook up with them. Joseph travels across Samaria and eventually finds his brothers there in the Valley of Dothan. Now, you remember that they were so envious and angry with their brother that they threw him into a pit. That pit would have been just beyond that forest over there. And sure enough, not before long, they spot a caravan of Ishmaelite merchants who are on their way down south to Egypt. Guess where were they at? Where were they at? Exactly, this highway. Okay, you can really see. You can see the area there, the urban area in the back. They could have, seen them, miles away. And not before long, they sell their brothers to those merchants. And in fact, this is where Joseph began his long journey south on his way to Egypt. Okay, so this is where it all began. And again, it's so neat just to remember that the Bible is not just a collection of myths and legends, okay, like Greek mythology. It's actually a book which, describes